Well, hey, everybody. My name is Eric Waldrop. I own Your Next Step Leadership Coaching, and I'm so glad to be with you. And I'm glad to be with my friend, Amy Loflin. Amy, thanks for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Eric. Thanks for inviting me.
So I invited Amy to join a conversation with me today because I feel like she has a certain heart and passion for something that I really want to unpack in this interview. So, Amy, I'm super glad that you're here. But first, tell us a little bit about you, what you do, your family, and all that kind of stuff before we just dive straight into the content.
Sure. Well, I guess, high-level highlights for me is I'm married to my husband, Chad. We've been married for over 23 years now. We have two boys. Jacob is our oldest. He is almost 19 and just finished his first year at Clemson. And yes, go Tigers. And we have another son, Ben is our youngest. He is a sophomore at East Forsyth High School. So he's finishing up that year.
Nice.
And then, professionally, I have been on staff at the Summit Church for almost 9 years now. And it's kind of ebbed and flowed a little bit, but I'm currently on staff with our Oak Ridge location as the groups director and the serve director. So a dual role there. So never a dull moment.
I was going to say, sounds like a lot on your plate, a lot of responsibility.
Yeah, that's the way I like it. Every day's different.
Absolutely. So you and I have talked about this before, but you have recently, as of the last, I think, year, you started something on the side that you're really passionate about and believe in. You want to tell me a little bit about what that is?
Yeah. I would say, I could probably track it back maybe as many as 10 years ago, just starting to have a bit of a passion to use my voice and to speak up. I wasn't sure exactly what that was supposed to look like. I've always kind of had a bit of a teaching personality. Always just kind of consider myself a full-time student anyway. So I love to learn, but I think as I learn, I get really excited and I want to share it. So yeah, I guess it was about, like you mentioned, a couple of years ago, I just found the courage or the timing to start voicing that desire and that passion to some key people in my life. And fortunately just got some encouragement. And again, I wasn't really sure what I was saying yes to quite yet. And sometimes I'm still kind of wondering what it's going to end up looking like. And I don't think there's an end up anyway. You know, it's just, keep saying yes and just seeing where God's going to take it. But so, yeah, I have a passion for speaking.
I love it.
Somewhat of writing as well, but I really enjoy the crafting of the messages and just connecting with an audience and just taking them on a journey along with me.
That's awesome. So I love your phrasing that you felt like, years ago, that desire to speak up. Was there anything specifically that you felt impassioned about to speak up about?
Well, if I had narrowed it down to one word, it would be Jesus.
It's a good thing to speak about.
There you go. It was definitely going to be something that was faith-based and something very just personal, not just for me personally. I didn't want to just stand up and talk about myself, but just helping people connect with Jesus in a more personal level, for sure, was a big piece of that. As the first few questions that were coming my way with people that I was seeking wisdom from was, what's your platform? What's your niche? What do you feel like you are going to be speaking primarily about or going to be known for? And I struggled with that. I was really wrestling with it. And as I was going along, I felt like almost like a car that was out of a line. That kept my steering wheel kept trying to go a certain direction, and it just never felt like I was heading that. Like that's where I felt like I was being led. And that culture and well-meaning people were immediately assuming that I was going to be speaking only to women or at women's conferences and that kind of that line, but it just never felt like that's what I had the desire to do, because I just feel led to love people. And it's been a fun journey to find that if it's speaking to youth at our impact ministry or to generations ahead of me. So it doesn't matter to me the gender or the age or where someone finds themselves on their faith walk. So it's just that passion, because I feel like I take new steps in my faith as I get to know other people's stories too.
That's awesome. I love it. What do you think has happened personally in your life that has made you so passionate and so ready for this moment? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, and I don't think I was late in saying yes to this. As I mentioned, I felt like it was something that was stirring and building, but I think it was a process that I was going through and trying to get to know Jesus better. Mm-hmm. And it was just this, I grew up a Christian. I grew up in a Christian home in the Presbyterian church. And so faith has never been really new to me, but, we all go through ebbs and flows and ups and downs, but I think it was going through this process of realizing that I continued to keep putting the divine in a box. Mm-hmm. And it was him continually to tell me, no, I'm bigger. I'm bigger than that. My love is greater than that. And finally just getting to a place of surrender with that and just living open-handed with it. Mm-hmm. I think that I was finding this pivotal moment where I was trying to understand the divine and understand Jesus through the lens of my story.
Right.
And there was something that shifted along my journey that it was, no, I need to be understanding my story through the lens of his story. And that was a huge change for me. And I still find myself, even in different circumstances, trying to evaluate God through that lens.
I like that.
But really, we just need to flip that around. And that's when we start to understand our story and how it applies as we continue to dig in our limited human capacity to understand him and his story.
So what was that shift for you that was kind of that breakthrough moment of really understanding, Jesus for who he is rather than just through the filter of your own experience?
I think it was a lot of things, Eric. It was, sometimes I can be a slow learner.
We all can, right?
Right. I think it was, it's kind of like turning a cruise ship around. It doesn't happen on a dime, and it's just a journey.
Yeah.
Continuing, deciding to just live open-handed with our faith and some pivotal life circumstances, challenges that I have faced, some wounds, trying to heal from some of those, and working through some forgiveness of things that I needed to forgive from my past of some of those wounds. And I think it was just a little bit at a time. Yeah.
Yeah. So what advice would you give to people who are, going back to your words that you just used, that are working through some wounds, maybe things have happened to them that have been certainly painful? What advice would you give to people who may be caught in some of that processing and not able to maybe take some steps forward in their relationship with Jesus? But from what you've learned or what you've experienced, what advice would you give to people there?
Oh boy, that's a great question. That's a whole message.
Right.
I think the first thing is understanding the identity of God, and that our circumstances don't shape who he is. I know just one example from my life. My mom died suddenly when I was a senior in college, and he suddenly didn't feel so good anymore.
Yeah.
And then it was a friend who lovingly looked at me and said, "Amy, God didn't change simply because your mom died." And I had to be at a certain place in my grief process and
to be able to hear that, right?
Yeah, without your throat. But to understand that, God is eternal. God is Alpha and the Omega. He is all knowing, all good, all present, all of the time. And our peaks and valleys don't affect him. He affects us. And it's constantly trying to get that order right. And when I tried to understand the identity of God through the lens of my grief, he was punitive, or even absent, or harsh. But again, when I flip that around and try to understand my loss through the lens of a loving God, who cares for me and wants to use all of my circumstances to shape me, then that's when I'm able to understand and look at that grief and that difficult time of my life and realize some of the beautiful things that came out of my grief. That, I mean, no one would ever ask for those difficult circumstances, but there are things that happen from that. There are qualities that he developed in me that I don't think he could have otherwise, or would have otherwise.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing you say is, if you change your perspective of those things that happen in your life, you're able to really be able to see a different side of what those experiences can do for your faith, for your outlook, for how you're healing right through stuff.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much that is out of our control that we cannot choose, that we cannot control, but we can control how we respond. And I knew very early on, even just some circumstances that happened as a result of my mom's death, that it could easily turn me into a bitter person. And that's not who I wanted to be. And it's that question of, is it going to make me bitter, or am I going to choose to let it make me better? And as cheesy as that may sound, it is it's kind of a guidepost. Just constantly that self-check of, okay, is this who I want to be? So
I like it. A while ago, you said something about having the courage to really acknowledge, excuse me, this new passion in you, to really want to speak up and use your voice. What were some of the fears that you had to bust through and have courage to like step through?
Yeah. Great question. Just your own insecurities of, there's the voice, I think that everyone, if we admit it is in our minds of, who do you think you are? What do you think you have to offer? You don't have the degree in theology to even have the authority to speak, or, whatever that may be. And, but again, you tie it back to the life of Jesus and how he used different people in miraculous ways. And, just looking at women in general, how he constantly elevated their status. And just time and time again, the woman at the well, he connected with her and drew her out. And then that one conversation, he connected with her and knew that she was ready for that living water. And there was that transformation in her, that she came to the well in shame and hiding, and she left shouting the news of Jesus. He chose her to reveal to her that he is the Messiah. And Mary, that sat at his feet, he elevated her status. He connected with Martha and even admitted to her that he was the resurrection and the life. At the empty tomb, he meets the women there and tells them, go and tell. And not just go and tell it to other women, not just go and tell it in your own home, but go and tell it to the men, go and tell it to disciples. And so I think that, just again, looking at the life of Jesus, that he was the divine in human form. Cool. I think sometimes it's easy for us, and men, women, no matter who we are, we may cherry pick the Bible. And we find certain scriptures that we think, okay, because it says this means you can't do that, or you aren't supposed to do this. But when we instead just focus on the life of Jesus and what he modeled, that's where I found my empowerment. And that constant voice of, no, I'm writing a story in you, and someone needs to hear it. And then of course the other people, the voices that are in my life that he put in front of me to help give me that courage. So yeah, I think it was two things. I think it was one, it was fighting the insecurities, but then I also needed to check my motives, because it felt incredibly arrogant to say, I want a platform. I want to share a message. I want that opportunity. So I had to continually check my heart. Like, okay, is this passion coming from Jesus? Is he really wanting, am I humbling and surrendering myself in a way that I just want him to use me? Or am I wanting to make a name for myself?
Right.
So it was constantly that gut check of my motives. So yeah.
That's so good. Somebody told me once when I was really struggling with, getting started with my coaching business, and you said some really cool things that are very true. All the negative self-talk, all the insecurities we each have, all that kind of thing. And somebody said something one time, and they said it off the cuff, and I don't even remember where I heard it, but the guy said, or the woman said, I can't remember who said it, but if you can add good to the world, why wouldn't you do it? And I was like, that was the push I needed, to just kind of go, and that kind of thing. But so
good.
So when I asked you that question, what I observed is you listed a lot of different women in the Bible who God used to do something really significant. In your opinion, are there any unique challenges that women may feel when they're being called to step into some space that may be unfamiliar or may require a lot of courage? Does that make sense?
Sure. Yeah. No, I think you're right. I do think there are unique challenges. And I think that it's going to have a lot to do with their upbringing. I enjoy having multiple conversations with a variety of different people that grew up with different types of faith backgrounds. And I mentioned I grew up Presbyterian. One of our associate minister growing up was female. Her name was Joanne. She was a huge influence in my life as a youth. And so that part was not foreign to me personally. So I didn't have to break past that. But it has been interesting to have different conversations with people who did grow up in a different type of background where women needed to be seen and not heard.
Gotcha.
Not only that their voice wasn't valued, it was actually silenced. And so, those conversations have been interesting and eye-opening to me, and just trying to encourage other women and men too, having great conversations with men and friends of mine and family that have great opinions about this as well, and that make it better mentality.
Yeah.
And I think that we have to be really responsible with this as women, and whether that's in ministry or any type of leadership that we feel like maybe our gender may play a role of how someone may perceive our abilities or capacities. And I just think it's important to be respectful and honoring and meeting people where they are. There's plenty of times on other issues. I'm Caucasian, and so I make mistakes. I make assumptions when it comes to racial issues. Right. And so I know I learn a whole lot more when I do make those mistakes, and someone from a different racial background comes to me with love and truth, not anger, especially when it's a mistake that I don't realize I'm even making. So I think it's just that open dialogue is important. That's in an effort to unite and not divide. Because I think that sometimes our passions can be so fierce that they could end up creating walls instead of bridges. So I think we just have to be delicate and honor God with the voice that we feel like he's giving us.
I really like what you said about being responsible with your voice, right? I think that applies to all of us.
Right.
What message do you want women to hear specifically from you?
I just think that just the message that they have a voice and they have a gift. and that they are valued, and to not let anyone say that they are not. And again, I encourage them, and I challenge them. I encourage them to look at the life of Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
It just jumps out at you after you start really digging and paying attention and putting it into the context of that culture,
Right.
Of how he treated women, and just having a conversation with a woman in public was huge in that culture. To us, that doesn't seem like that's a big deal, but
right.
He was constantly elevating them. And so just recognizing that God's given you a voice, he's given you a gift. And whether that's just a conversation with the person in the cubicle beside you, someone at the gym, your own child, your own husband, or maybe that's something in leadership. I mean, whatever that's going to look like, your voice matters, and you have a story, and someone needs to hear it.
I like it. I like it a lot. So if somebody wanted to contact you for you to maybe come speak to them or to their group or anything like that, what's the best way for them to get hold of you?
Oh, thanks for asking that. I do have a website. It's just my name, amyloflin.com. And so there is a contact me button on there. And then I also have a business Facebook page that's also just my name. So come find me on there. I love to engage with other people. That was one of the biggest things stepping into this. I don't want it to be a monologue. This journey is not about a monologue. I want it a dialogue. I love to dialogue with others and hear their own stories, their own feedback. I love to just see where God's hand is in other people's stories too. So that gives me life, breathes joy into my spirit too. So
that's awesome. Well, we all need to do more things that bring us joy.
Right.
We all need to. Well, Amy, thank you so much for your time. One of the things I respect so much about you is just your passion to want to do things that matter. And I think that's infectious. I think people see that in you. They appreciate that. And I admire anybody that will step out in faith against some odds to go, you know what, I really need to just follow Jesus and where he's leading me right now and just see where he takes me, because that's essentially what God has called all of us to do, right? In following him. And we all have a cross to bear, whatever that may be. But there's so much joy in that, and what it brings in our life to be able to make that kind of difference. So it sounds like you're already making an extreme difference, which is why I wanted you on the interview today.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. And I think that's a great point, Eric, too, that, when he called his disciples, it was just follow me.
Right.
And it wasn't, here's what you have in store. Here's what's going to happen. Here's the name that's going to come with this walk. It was just follow me. And it was just one step at a time, and just saying that next best yes and seeing what he has in store. So pretty exciting.
Well, hey, thank you for your time today, and we'll have to catch up and do this again soon.
That'd be great, Eric. Thanks for your time. I appreciate it.
All right. Hey, everybody, thanks for joining us. Y'all have a wonderful day, and talk to you soon.